My husband Evan looked at the grocery bags on the counter and laughed when I asked why our joint card had been declined. Buy your own food, he said. Stop living off me. I did not argue. I put the groceries back, changed a few automatic payments, and started buying exactly enough for one person. 3 weeks later, on his birthday, nearly 20 relatives walked into our kitchen expecting the dinner he had promised them. They found an empty stove and one container labeled with my name. Evan went pale. What did you do? I smiled. Exactly what you told me to do. His mother was still holding the birthday cake when she looked from me to Evan. Behind her, people kept filing through the back door because his family never knocked during gatherings. His sister Marcy had 2 bags of ice. An uncle carried a folding table. The kids immediately asked where the chips were. There were no chips, no trays warming in the oven, and no foil pans beside the sink. The refrigerator held condiments, Evan's half-finished takeout, and the lunch I had prepared for work the next day. Diane, his mother, finally said, Evan told us dinner was at 6. It is 6, I said. That was not the answer she wanted, but it was the only one I had. Evan stepped closer to me and lowered his voice. You knew they were coming. I knew you invited them. You always handle the food. I told you I wasn't hosting. His face tightened. Not now. Marcy heard him. She set the ice on the floor and said, Wait, you said she had everything covered. Evan turned toward her. I said it was handled. That is not the same thing, I said. The room had gone quiet enough that I could hear one of the kids opening and closing cabinet doors. Diane put the cake down. Can somebody explain what is happening? Evan rubbed both hands over his face, then looked at me like I was the one making a scene. She is trying to punish me over a stupid argument. I could have let that stand. For years, I had let his shorter version of things stand because correcting him in front of people felt disloyal. That habit was part of how we had reached this point. So I said, 3 weeks ago, the joint card was declined while I was buying groceries. Evan had frozen it without telling me. When I asked why, he told me to buy my own food and stop living off it. Since then, I have bought my own food. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Then one of his cousins quietly closed the cabinet he had been searching. Evan laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You make it sound like I starved you. No, I have a job, I bought food. You knew what I meant. I asked you more than once what you meant. You refused to discuss it. Diane looked at him. Did you freeze the card? He glanced toward the doorway instead of answering her. That answer was enough. Marcy pulled out her phone. I am ordering pizza. Evan snapped. Nobody needs to order anything. There were nearly 20 people standing in a kitchen with no dinner. Marcy looked around and said, Then what exactly are we doing? He did not have an answer. The party did not end, but it never really started. Marcy ordered pizza. An uncle came back with paper plates and soda. Diane cut the cake early because the kids were restless. I stayed because it was my house too. I found extra cups and moved coats off the couch, but I did not announce anything, show anyone bank statements, or give a speech. I also did not rescue him. That was the part Evan could not forgive. For most of our marriage, rescuing him had looked so ordinary that I had not called it that. It looked like noticing his mother's birthday was coming and buying the gift he signed his name to. It looked like keeping enough food in the house for the relatives he invited with little warning. It looked like replacing the laundry detergent, paying the electric bill, scheduling the furnace service, and remembering that his father could not eat onions. None of those things seemed big by themselves. Together, they formed the part of our life Evan had stopped seeing. We had been married for 8 years. I worked in billing for a physical therapy practice. My job was not glamorous, but it was steady, and I had been there long enough to have decent benefits and a flexible schedule. Evan worked in commercial equipment sales. He earned more than I did, especially in good commission months, and he liked saying that he carried the mortgage. That was technically true. The mortgage came from the account where his paycheck was deposited. What he left out was that most of the other household expenses came from mine. I paid the utilities, internet, car insurance, groceries, household supplies, and most medical copies. I also covered the smaller expenses that arrived one at a time, including gifts, family gatherings, repairs, and the warehouse membership Evan used more than I did. We had not designed it that way. It had developed gradually. Early in our marriage, his income was less predictable, so I took the regular bills. When his career improved, the arrangement stayed in place. He paid the largest single bill, and I paid almost everything else. Because his payment was easier to name, he began treating it as if it were the whole structure. My mistake was that I noticed and said almost nothing. Sometimes I even supported his version. When Diane once praised him for taking such good care of me, I smiled instead of mentioning that I had just paid for the water heater. I told myself healthy couples did not turn every receipt into a weapon. But there is a difference between not keeping score and letting someone erase your contribution. The grocery card incident happened on a Thursday evening. I had stopped at the store after work because Evan had invited his parents for Sunday dinner. My cart held food for the week, ingredients for the dinner, paper towels, dish soap, and the coffee he insisted tasted better than the cheaper brand. The card was declined. I tried it again because I assumed the machine had made an error. It declined a second time. There was a line behind me, so I moved the cart aside and called Evan. He answered from his car. I said, "Did something happen with the joint card?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I locked it." Why? Because spending has gotten ridiculous. I looked at the cart. There was nothing ridiculous in it. No wine, no expensive cuts of meat, no impulse purchase. Most of it was food he had asked for. You could have told me. I am telling you now. I asked whether there was a fraud alert or whether he was worried about the balance. He said, "No, I am tired of watching money disappear." The money he was talking about was partly mine. My paycheck still went into our joint checking account, even though most of my bills came from a separate account I had kept since before the marriage. The credit card itself was in both our names. I reminded him of that. He gave a short laugh and said, "Your paycheck does not cover half of what I pay." That was when I asked him what he wanted me to do about the groceries in front of me. He said, "Buy your own food. Stop living off me." The cashier was pretending not to listen, which somehow made the whole thing more embarrassing. I left the cart with an employee, bought a small bag of groceries with my personal card, and went home. Evan was already there, sitting in the living room with his shoes on the coffee table. He asked where dinner was. I said, "I bought my food." He stared at me, waiting for the joke to end. Then he called me childish. I asked him to sit down with me and go through the bills. He said he had had a long day and did not want to discuss spreadsheets over dinner. "There is no dinner," I said. He ordered takeout. The next morning, I changed my direct deposit so my paycheck would go into my personal account. I did not empty the joint account. I did not touch his money. I left enough in our shared checking to cover the bills that were already scheduled. Then I made a list. I went through 3 months of statements, not because I was preparing a grand reveal, but because I needed to know whether I had misunderstood our finances as badly as he claimed. I had not. His mortgage payment was larger than any one bill I covered. But once I added everything I paid, our monthly contributions were much closer than he had suggested. Some months, especially months with family events or repairs, mine was nearly the same as his. I sent him the list and asked for a time that weekend to agree on a fair split. He replied, "We are not roommates." I wrote back, "Then do not treat me like a dependent." He did not respond. For the next few days, I bought enough groceries for myself. I cooked simple meals and packed lunches for work. I used one shelf in the refrigerator and one cabinet beside the stove. Evan treated it like a contest. The first night, he ordered a burger and left the bag on the counter where I would see it. The second night, he ate cereal. On the third, he asked whether there was any coffee. I told him there was some in the container he had bought the month before. It was empty. He looked inside it anyway. "Are you seriously not replacing basic things now? You told me to buy my own food. You are twisting my words." I asked him again to discuss the bills. He said, "Forget it." That became his answer to everything. He did not unlock the card. He did not agree to a budget. He did not apologize. He simply waited for me to return to normal. That was his blind spot. He believed normal was something I maintained automatically, like heat coming through a vent. He did not understand that normal required decisions, time, and money from a person he had just told was a burden. About a week before his birthday, Marcy texted me and asked whether she should bring ice. I replied, "For what?" She called immediately. "For Evan's birthday dinner, Sunday." He said you two were doing the usual thing. The usual thing meant his family came to our house. I planned the food, cleaned, cooked, and made sure there were options for everybody's dietary issues. Evan grilled something outside for part of the evening and received most of the compliments. I told Marcy, I am not hosting a dinner. She was quiet. Then she said, he told Mom it was all set. It is not. Did you tell him that? Yes. She sounded uncomfortable. Do you want me to tell everyone not to come? I said, tell him you called me, ask him what he has planned. That evening, Evan came home angry. He said, why are you dragging Marcy into our argument? I did not invite her into anything. She asked me about ice for a party I did not know you had promised. You knew my birthday was coming. Knowing your birthday is coming is not agreeing to feed 20 people. He said I was being dramatic. I said I was not hosting. He told me I would calm down before Sunday. I should have told every person myself that there would be no dinner. Some people still criticize me for that, and I understand why. But I had told Evan and Marcy. Evan kept assuring everyone it was handled because he believed I would be too embarrassed to let the evening fail. I was embarrassed. I just was not willing to purchase my way out of it anymore. After the last relatives left on his birthday, Evan shut the front door and turned the lock harder than necessary. He said, you made me look like an idiot. I was collecting cups from the living room. You told people I was hosting after I told you I was not. You could have made something, pasta, chili, anything, for almost 20 people. You know how to do it. That sentence explained more than he intended. It was not that he believed dinner would appear by magic. He knew I would have to do it. He simply thought my time and money were available to him, even after he had withdrawn access to shared money and insulted me for using it. I said, you did not ask me. You assigned it to me. He called that semantics. Then he said his mother was upset and Marcy thought we needed counseling. I said, I have been asking for a real conversation for 3 weeks. Not with my sister in the middle of it. She was standing in the middle because you invited her. He paced through the kitchen and listed everything he believed he provided. The house, stability, vacations, a better neighborhood. He said I had no idea how much pressure he carried. Some of that was true. His job was stressful. His income varied. The mortgage worried him during slow months. I had sometimes dismissed that because he made more money overall. I could admit that without accepting the rest. I told him, I am willing to talk about pressure. I am not willing to be controlled because you are under pressure. He said freezing the card was not control. It was budgeting. Budgeting involves both people, I said. You changed access to shared money and told me I was living off you. He stared at the counter. For the first time, his voice became quieter. I should not have said it like that. Do you believe it? He took too long to answer. Finally, he said, I believe I carry more than you understand. That was not an apology. It was a softer version of the same accusation. I went to the spare bedroom that night. Over the next month, we separated our finances properly. I transferred my share of the mortgage and common utilities on the first of each month. I removed my card from his subscriptions. I stopped paying his car insurance and told him before the next renewal. I kept records, not to trap him, but because I no longer trusted verbal agreements. The consequences were not dramatic. They were inconvenient. He discovered how often groceries had been restocked without him noticing. He also discovered that insurance, internet, household supplies, and family gifts did not become free just because none of them was called a mortgage. He discovered that his relatives contacted me because I had trained them to. Diane called about her anniversary. I told her she needed to ask Evan. She said she did not want to be in the middle, then stopped speaking to me for 2 weeks when I agreed that she should stay out of it. Marcy reacted differently. She apologized for assuming I would host the birthday dinner. She also told me she thought I should have canceled it directly. I probably should have, I said. That surprised her. I was not interested in pretending I had handled everything perfectly. Letting people walk into that kitchen had made my point, but it had also embarrassed people who had not created the problem. I regretted that part. I did not regret refusing to cook. Evan agreed to one counseling session after Marcy pressured him. During the session, he kept returning to the birthday dinner. He said it proved I could be cold and vindictive. The counselor asked what had happened before the dinner. He described the card as temporarily restricted. I said, he froze it without telling me. He said I was exaggerating because I had access to my own money. The counselor asked why he had told me to stop living off him if he knew I had my own income. Evan said, it was something said in anger. Then he spent several minutes explaining why he had been angry. That was when I understood what I had been waiting for. I had thought the right breakdown of expenses would change his mind. I had thought if I showed him how much I contributed, he would realize he had been unfair. But the argument was never really about arithmetic. He needed to believe the mortgage made him the central provider because that belief gave him authority. Every expense I covered was treated as optional. Every task I performed was treated as natural. The one payment with his name attached became proof that the whole life belonged to him. I could not fix that with a cleaner spreadsheet. We attended 2 more sessions. He became more careful with his words, but not more honest. He said he respected my work, then suggested I take over groceries again because I was better at managing the house. He wanted equal partnership until I proposed equal responsibility for his family events. Eventually he said, "How long are you going to keep punishing me?" I said, "I am not punishing you. I am no longer doing things you considered worthless until they stopped." He told me that sounded rehearsed. Maybe it did. I had been trying to explain the same thing for weeks. 2 months after his birthday, I rented a small apartment near my office. Leaving was not triumphant. I cried while packing dishes. I worried about whether I had given up too quickly. The apartment had old carpet, a loud air conditioner, and a kitchen half the size of the one I left. Evan stayed in the house while we decided whether he could refinance it or whether we would have to sell. That process was still unresolved the last time we spoke about it. His family did not unite behind me. Diane said marriages survived worse things than harsh words and a ruined birthday. One cousin stopped inviting me to gatherings. An uncle said private problems should stay private. Marcy helped me carry boxes. She did not say I was completely right. She said Evan had gotten used to being protected from the effects of his own behavior. That was close enough. A few weeks after I moved, Evan called and said the house felt empty. I almost laughed, but he sounded genuinely tired. He said he had been thinking. He said he understood now that I had done more than he noticed. He apologized for freezing the card and for the way he spoke to me. Then he asked whether we could start over. I asked, "Do you still think I was living off you?" He said, "I think we were both contributing in different ways." It was the best answer he had given. But when I asked why it had taken an empty kitchen and a separation for him to see that, he became defensive again. He said I had forced everything into a crisis. I told him I needed more time. I still do not know whether he will ever fully understand. Sometimes I wonder whether I should have insisted on counseling earlier, before resentment turned a grocery card into a symbol for the entire marriage. Sometimes I remember the look on Diane's face while she held that cake and feel guilty all over again. But I also remember standing at the store with a declined card, listening to my husband describe me as a burden while my cart was full of food for him and his parents. That moment changed something I could not put back. I buy my own groceries now. Not because I am trying to prove I do not need anyone. I know a marriage is supposed to involve dependence, generosity, and shared responsibility. I buy them because every item in my small kitchen is there by agreement, not entitlement. Evan told me to stop living off him. I followed that instruction farther than he expected. The part he never understood was that I had not been living off him. I had been helping build a life he thought appeared on its own.